This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Here's your host, Brandon Contes.
Alrighty, welcome to episode 55 of the Awful Announcing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Contes, and this week we have Connor Hughes joining us, who covers the Jets and Giants for SNY and has covered the Jets specifically for quite a while. Connor, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. What was your first season on the Jets beat?
Yeah, so I actually started covering them when I was still in college. So I think my first year around the team at all was 2014, and then I was hired full-time by the Star-Ledger in 2016. But I mean, it kind of bounces around there a little bit because, you know, I wasn't obviously doing road games because I had classes and stuff like that, but was still there for some of the Geno. Mike Vick was there at one point.
Yep.
And then everything that's followed.
How does covering the Jets today with Aaron Rodgers compare to those earlier years when you started?
Man, I wasn't around the team when they made those back-to-back AFC championship runs where they were a little bit of the talk in New York, and there was so much media attention. You know, for most of my career, aside from like that little glimmer in 2015 with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker, the Jets have, for lack of a better term, been varying degrees of bad. And for most of those years, there really hasn't even been any season I think they began with legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. So the attention and the hype that's been drawn ever since Rodgers got here, it's been new. Certainly for me, it's been fun though. But I think specifically with Rodgers, the way that it's changed is I don't ever in my entire career recall covering a player that is so polarizing and so divisive on so many different levels. Where he does basically anything. And not only is that news, but you have, it feels like 60 or 70% of the people that absolutely hate him for it. And then the other 30% of the people that are willing to die for him on that hill. So it's been very, very unique.
Have you ever covered a team where the starting quarterback skipped mandatory minicamp?
Probably not. I don't think so. Well, I guess maybe Ryan Fitzpatrick, but he was unsigned at that point because, so before he was signed, so probably Fitz. I don't think Geno ever did it. And then obviously Josh McCown's not going to do it. And then it was the Hackenberg, Sam Darnold, all that other stuff. So no, I haven't. So that was a new headline. But I will say, like, and again, it's I don't know, like I get the optics of it. And it is very, very poor optics. For the starting quarterback of an NFL team to miss mandatory minicamp. But it is probably important to note, though, that the dude was there for every single day of phase 1 of their voluntary workouts, missed just 1 week of phase 2, and then was there at every single day of OTAs except for these 2 mandatory minicamp practices. So it's not like this was when Aaron was in Green Bay and he would just skip the entire offseason, show up for the 2 days, and then go back on vacation. I mean, he was here for the very vast majority of what the Jets were doing, and then just missed those 2 practices there for mandatory minicamp.
Yeah, well, that portion's not the definitely not the juicy headline.
No.
Do you know where Aaron Rodgers was or is?
Is probably, yeah. So the thing I could say is that it was out of the country on a pre-scheduled trip. For security reasons, the exact location, they just don't want it out there, which again makes sense because the minute anyone says Aaron Rodgers is definitively at X location, you're going to have Page 6 there. You're going to have TMZ there. And it's suddenly not going to be, I don't know if necessarily the safest environment probably is the right word to use, but it's going to become a circus immediately. But I would expect, like, this isn't classified information that is never going to be known.
Yeah.
As soon as Aaron Rodgers gets back, I mean, it's going to be public knowledge. It's just for this point in time, I know he doesn't want that information directly out there. So, you know, kind of everybody's sort of waiting for that to become public. But what I can tell you is it's out of the country. It was on a pre-scheduled trip that he originally put into plans when he ruptured his Achilles tendon. He wasn't sure if he was ever going to play again. He didn't know what the rehab was going to look like. So during those grueling, miserable days, he wanted something to look forward to. So he planned a trip to a place that he's always wanted to visit. And he thought he planned those dates for the trip after mandatory minicamp and after the Jets offseason program. Unfortunately, when the minicamp practices, there's 2 weeks you can do minicamp. When the minicamp schedule came out and it overlapped with that trip, he immediately let the Jets know and was like, look, this is what got me through arguably the darkest point in my career. or maybe undeniably the darkest point of my career. So I'm going to have to miss these 2 days, but I've been there for everything else. The Jets were understanding, and I would say even mostly accepting of it. Their whole thing was just that, like, look, we can't make it an unexcused absence, because the minute we say, yes, Aaron Rodgers, you can miss practice because you have a vacation trip planned, it suddenly sets a bad precedent for the rest of the locker room. You have Hassan Reddick who's missing because he wants a new contract. So he wants to take care of his family. That's not okay. But Aaron Rodgers can go out on a trip, and that is okay. So it was just one of those things where they were like, look, we have to make it unexcused. Rodgers was like, that's okay. This is that important to me. And he went on the trip. But I will say again, I would expect very soon that date or the location of where he is to be out.
So even though the Jets were understanding of the absence and sort of even on board, maybe they didn't anticipate it becoming a distraction, but did it ultimately become a distraction, the fact that he missed those days?
It's New York. So a distraction. So here's my thing is, when I think of a distraction, I look at it in two different ways. A distraction to me is something that's going to impact the team and impact the team long-term and impact the team this coming season. You know what I mean? I don't see this impacting the Jets and what they're going to accomplish this coming year in any way, shape, or form. I don't.
Yeah.
If they're going to go on a playoff run and maybe reach, not just a playoff run, but go deep into the playoffs and maybe even reach the Super Bowl, missing 2 days of mandatory minicamp and the headlines that came with it, it's not going to impact it at all. If the Jets don't make that run, the Jets don't make the playoffs, and everyone gets fired after this year, it's not going to be because Aaron Rodgers missed 2 days of mandatory minicamp. It's likely going to be because of injuries or the offense just didn't come together with Nathaniel Hackett. However, this was a headline. It was noteworthy. It was newsworthy. It was unnecessary attention that didn't necessarily have to be there in June. I mean, when was minicamp? The 9th, 10th, 11th? Like right around. It didn't have to be a headline or news in mid-June if Rodgers took this trip a week later. You know what I mean? Or a month later. So, I mean, it didn't have to be there. So distraction, I don't necessarily know if that's the word I would use, but it certainly was a newsworthy headline that probably it was an unnecessary negative headline that probably didn't have to be there. But again, if this was important to Rodgers and he's willing to do it and he's willing to deal with the backlash and the headlines that came with it, you got to kind of say, okay, let it go. But I don't think it's a distraction that's going to impact this team in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Now, if he followed through with being vice president, that's a distraction. Yeah. That is a distraction. If he was going to run for vice president or be in the running for vice president and missing practices and games to go like campaign, that is a distraction. I don't think this is a distraction.
Yeah, it's not detrimental to the Jets season, of course. The fact that Rodgers missed those couple of days, but when Rodgers earlier this year says things like anything we're doing that has nothing to do with winning needs to be assessed. It's not a sometimes thing; it's an every time thing. Like it's almost like he served that up for the media to then throw it back at him when he does something like this, just missing those couple of days of practice.
Yeah, that quote's going to follow him as every time there is something like this that comes up. Every time the Jets don't win a game, every time things go negatively or poorly, that is going to be thrown back in his face.
Yeah.
It's going to happen, and I understand where he was coming from with it because, again, it's open to interpretation. The way that he meant it was. When you are in this building, when you are at the Jets, when you are at One Jets Drive, everything that you do needs to be about winning. It can't be about your endorsements on the side. It can't be about stat padding. It can't be about your money. It has to be completely entirely about winning, and then everything else will come with it. In his opinion, when he is not at One Jets Drive, you can do whatever the hell you want to do. You can go on an ayahuasca retreat. You can go do the endorsements. You can go do the commercials. You can do this. You can do that. It doesn't matter once you're outside the building. It's when you are in the building, you can't do that. I think what's probably not totally accurate and what I don't think would be my counter to that and would be my argument to that is that there are things that you can do when you're not at One Jets Drive that brings attention to One Jets Drive because at the end of the day, when you step foot on the field on Sunday, there's one logo on your helmet, right? And there's only one logo on your chest. And everything you do, you're associated with that, and you are associated with the Jets. So when he wants to or is considering running for vice president, It is not Aaron Rodgers is considering running for vice president. It is Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers is considering running for vice president. And what the heck does this mean for the Jets? You know, when he makes the comment or he chooses not to go to minicamp because he's having this trip, it's Jets quarterback is skipping minicamp. You know what I mean? So, yeah, he's doing these things on his own time, or in this case, on the Jets' time, which he's going to get fined for, and it's unexcused for that reason. But that's kind of we can battle the semantics, and you're kind of on a side of the fence of what way you want to fall. But I don't think it necessarily was the greatest choice of words for what's fallen since. But in his mind, it's just everything has to be out winning when you're in the facility, and if you're not in the facility, do whatever the hell you want.
How do you think the Jets and specifically Robert Saleh handled the absence?
From minicamp?
Yeah.
They were fine with it. Like they didn't. This wasn't like they were freaking out. Or do you mean how they? What do you mean by that? Like, do you mean by how they handled it in terms of the media?
Right. In terms of letting everybody know that Rodgers wasn't going to be there, and
oh, very poorly. Yeah, very, very poorly. Yeah, that's okay. I thought you meant like, are they worried about it or how they handled it internally? No, that wasn't a great thing. Now, look, it was going to be, and I've talked to people at the Jets about this. Their argument is that it was going to be a headline no matter what, whether they said it when minicamp report date came or whether they said it a week ago at OTAs or when the offseason program began. They're like, look, we know we're not going to have Aaron for mandatory minicamp, but he's going to be there. That's their argument. My thing is that this has been known. This wasn't like Rodgers told him last week. He told them the minute the minicamp schedule came out. What the Jets should have done when they were very happy about the overall attendance that they had, minus like 3 or 4 players during the offseason program, when Aaron was there and they're speaking so glowingly about how much he means to the team, Robert should have stood up there and basically been like, look, it is unbelievable. He's here for the voluntary portion. Now, look, I'm just going to let you guys know. We know already he is not going to be able to be at mandatory minicamp. He's going to miss those 2 days. It's an unexcused absence because obviously it's a mandatory practice, but we know where he's going to be. He's been here for the full offseason program. Really not going to impact that much. That's what he should have come out and say. The way that they worded it of unexcused, subject to fine, it's something that was important. It like added fuel to the fire. You know what I mean? They could have dampened the flames, and I felt like on that podium, Robert fanned him a little bit. And it was maybe a lose-lose situation. That's what the Jets say, and that's what the Jets think. But I do think that they probably could have lessened the hysteria that came with it, because once they said it the way they did, it became, oh my God, where's Aaron Rodgers? Where's Aaron Rodgers? If they just said like, hey, it's a super important trip for him, and he's going to, and they said it weeks ago, I think it lessens and lessens and lessens and lessens by the time we actually get to minicamp. So that's probably what I would have done, or what I think they should have done. And
it makes them seem a little bit more in control if they came out ahead of it and did that. And it also I think it eliminates part of the distraction aspect of it too, because like now you're no longer going up to Tyrod Taylor and say, oh, did you know that Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to be here? And
then Tyrod's forced to lie and say like, no, I found out this morning. Again, I felt like I was talking to Tyrod Taylor when he was like found out he was starting over Tommy DeVito last year, like where he's like, I found out this morning, like when the whole team found out. Like it was almost like you were, again, it was a you know what show that was created, and it just was a circus that started swarming. And I think if you got ahead of it, it maybe is still a circus, but it's not as much of a circus as what it turned out to be, if that makes sense.
Do you think Rodgers trusts Robert Saleh?
Yeah, I do. I do. Yeah, I think he trusts Robert Saleh. I think that there was probably some annoyance with the way that Saleh handled that podium. I don't think that necessarily probably sat super well with him. You can probably read between the lines there with how Pat McAfee talked about Robert Saleh and how he handled that as a pretty good inkling into how Aaron Rodgers feels. So that was noteworthy to me. But at the end of the day, Brandon, like I think this is all boiled down to this for the Jets. They need to win some damn football games, right? Like, last year, they brought in Rodgers. They've got Hard Knocks here. They have the hysteria. They have they're building the wall in their facility where it's all of the pictures they're going to put up on their way to the Super Bowl. They're saying like, yeah, what was the line in Hard Knocks? Like the Crows or whatever. Like it was like, yeah, the haters hate us. Bring on the attention. You're gonna MF us to our face, and we're gonna sock you in the face anyway. Like we're gonna talk trash, and then we're gonna dunk on you. Like that was their mindset. Yet DJ Reed at OTA is saying their defense is going to be the 85 Bears, 2000 Ravens. Like they embraced all of that, and it blew up in their face. I I think that was a very humbling experience to everyone within the organization, coaching staff, players, that it does not matter what you do in the offseason. You need to win some damn football games. You know what I mean? And you can look back in 2019 when they had Gase, they signed Le'Veon and CJ Mosley. They won the offseason. They were a disaster. Now that last year they win the offseason, Aaron goes down, they become a disaster. They don't care about winning the offseason anymore. They realize they need to win football games or everyone's going to lose. And I think that maybe there is more apprehension internally about the direction the team is going, whether it's management or coaching staff, just because those wins haven't been there. But if they start 3-1 this season, everyone's going to be singing Robert's praises as far as coach of the year and Joe Douglas GM of the year. And this is all going to be a moot point. It's just the fact that there's a lot of negative headlines around the team right now, and they're coming off so much losing that it's tough to feel like overly optimistic because we just haven't seen it yet. This isn't year 2. This isn't year 1 of this regime. For Joe Douglas, it's year 5. For Robert Saleh, we're going on to year 4. It's time to do it. And unfortunately, there's not too much history there with the Jets to prove that either guy is going to do it, but they're confident in themselves. And at the end of the day, just got to win football games, and everyone will believe it too.
Earlier this year, there was the report from Diana Russini and the Athletic that essentially said other NFL teams feel Joe Douglas is the assistant GM to Aaron Rodgers. Is that true? Is that something that you agree with?
I don't know if it was Joe, but there were definitely people within the organization that were doing things to make the quarterback comfortable. And some of those moves last year, I think, received a lot of criticism when maybe they shouldn't. So for one, I would compare one that deserves a lot of criticism, one does not. Bringing in Randall Cobb on a veteran minimum deal to be your wide receiver 6 so that Aaron Rodgers, going into his first new locker room in 2 decades, has a friend there that he can sit next to and know. I have no issue with that at all. Like that's if you're starting a new company or say you're going to a party, right? You're going to find the person that you know to go mingle with, and then eventually you meet new people and you become friends with those people too. No issue with that. Giving Alan Lazard $11 million a year because he's familiar with the quarterback, very bad decision. Billy Turner, not a very good offensive tackle, not a good swing tackle. Bringing him in to be a swing tackle because he's tight with Rodgers, like, not a good move. So there were definitely things last offseason that the Jets did specifically to cater to Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think that was the smart idea. This offseason, there were moves that Rodgers wanted the team to make that they did not make. There were things that the Jets did this offseason that Rodgers maybe wasn't necessarily completely on board with, that the Jets did because they felt it was in the best interest of the team. You know? So I think that has been a changing and moving of the direction where it was almost like, they catered to him completely. And we can even go to how Robert handled that press conference. That was a pretty direct indication that they're not just letting Aaron step all over them. Like it is unexcused. He's going to be fine. Last year, I'll be honest with you, Brandon, last year, if Rodgers missed mandatory minicamp, I almost feel like the Jets would have said it's excused. Like they were that far into this, trying to woo him here and get him here and all those things, and smitten when he took the pay cut. Like I think that's probably what they would have done. This year there has been more of that, like, you're the quarterback, you're an MVP quarterback, we're going to do things to help you, but at the end of the day, the organization's ours, and we're going to do what we believe is best for the team. And so I think it's changed some. There's definitely people that, what Diana wrote, like, there's definitely people that feel that around the league. Like they're absolutely. I mean, I've heard that from other teams as well. Like that is not, Diana's not lying. Like that line isn't inaccurate. Like she absolutely got that from somebody, and people do feel that. But from talking to people inside the building and knowing how things are now working this year inside that building, it's not necessarily the truth anymore. If that makes sense in terms of how things are actually running compared to how the outside world feels they are running.
How is Aaron's relationship with Woody Johnson? Does he have a direct line to the owner, and does he use that direct line often?
Yeah, I mean, he met him like during exit meetings. He was one of the players that meets with Woody Johnson. Like the top, like everyone meets with GM, everyone meets with coach. Like, and then there's some people, like some players that get the exit meeting with the owner. And Aaron was one of the people that got the exit meeting with the owner. He talks to Woody, and I know Woody's involved, but Woody is also. There are times when Woody sees moves that he steps in and says, I want this to happen. I want this to be done. There are restraints that Woody sometimes puts on moves and financially and things of that nature. But for the most part, Brandon, like, there's a direct line to the owner there for Rodgers, but it is, sorry, I got a phone call.
That's right.
I wish I could say it was somebody important, but it's just my mom. there's a direct line to the owner for him, but it's not like, Aaron wants the Jets to sign Odell Beckham and Joe says no. He's not going to go call the owner and be like, Woody, Joe said he's not signing Odell and I really want him, and then suddenly the Jets sign him. It's not something like that.
Were there discussions about Nathaniel Hackett during the offseason and what to do with him going forward? What were those?
Yeah, he wasn't getting
was
fired.
Aaron Rodgers part of those?
So they weren't. That's not something he wouldn't know. I would say Nathaniel was never getting fired. Like I want to make that clear. Like I that blew up when I don't think I wrote that as clearly as what I should have when I said replaced. He was not getting fired. But the Jets had multiple conversations with an individual who would have essentially taken over the offense. Like it would have been his show. Nathaniel Hackett would have still had a voice. It's not like Nathaniel Hackett would have been kicked to the broom closet or like when Chip Kelly took over basically for the Eagles and Howie Roseman went into the basement. Like it wasn't like that. Like Hackett still would have had a say. He still would have been involved in offensive game planning. He still would have been involved in all those things.
Would he have retained the offensive coordinator title?
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, yes, but there would have been somebody that was then hired above him who would have run the show.
Yeah.
So is it offensive coordinator and suddenly there's a senior offensive consultant who's the one who's calling the plays? Like, yeah, you're the offensive coordinator, but Mike Kafka with the Giants. He's the Giants offensive coordinator. He's not calling the plays. Brian Dable is, right? Like, so, yeah, he's the offensive coordinator. He's not calling the plays. So it would have been one of those things that the final say that Nathaniel Hackett now has, it wouldn't have been his. From my understanding, he wasn't going to call the plays anymore if this person was hired. Like that was what was going to happen. He was going to be the new primary voice. That deal, he ended up he got signed by another team. So to be an offensive coordinator, just a more stable organization than the Jets, one that's going to, if it goes well, he's probably going to get a head coaching job. But also, if he just wants to be an offensive coordinator, he's not going to get fired because they just don't make major changes over there. So it's one of those things where like, yeah, that's. And I'll be honest with you, Brandon, that's the one for me that if people are talking about where's the downside of the Jets or where could things go south for the Jets, when they're that aggressive in trying to go get somebody, it tells me they've identified a potential issue. It tells me they've identified a potential problem. And that potential problem for me is like, okay, could that be what potentially derails this year? And I think they're putting a lot of eggs in the basket that Aaron Rodgers will solve everything and fix everything, that if he goes to the line and doesn't like a play call, he can just pull that out of his and fix everything. And Aaron is that spectacular when you look at what he's done throughout his career in terms of his talent and his ability. But that's also a lot of pressure to put on one individual. And that's my worry with the Jets, because on paper they look like a team that can legitimately compete within the AFC. So you try to find where's that blemish in the armor, where's that potential downfall? Where's the snake in the grass? That to me is that I am legitimately worried about the offensive coaching staff. That's a concern of mine.
Was there concern that if they did sort of hire somebody to oversee Hackett, that it would have annoyed Rodgers?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think that was a concern of theirs at all.
Were the Jets ever concerned that Aaron was actually going to take RFK Jr. up on his VP offer?
That's interesting. And that's a good question. I don't know if it ever got to the point where they needed to be concerned with it, because there was no way for Rodgers to run and be quarterback of the Jets. And I think that maybe there was a moment there where knowing Aaron and the things that he has interest in outside of the NFL, there might have been a moment there where Joe and Robert kind of went like, wait, like kind of paused for a second, or at least one of those things where they were like, crap, are we going to have to now figure out a way to navigate a season where our quarterback is both campaigning and being an NFL quarterback? And honestly, no, like I wouldn't surprise me if Aaron thought he could have done both. But it never got to the point where they needed to worry about that. So would they have? Yeah, I think they probably would have worried about that. It just never progressed to that point because the league, I mean, there's no way there's no way to campaign and be an NFL quarterback. Like you can't do both. And once Rodgers had to choose, I think he wants to see this one out.
Were the Jets surprised by that headline when it came out, or were they aware of it?
No, that was a surprise. No, that was I can't. So I don't. This is true. I don't know when they found out. Like I don't know what point in this, if they found out when the headline broke, when everyone else found out, or if they found out preemptively. I don't know that. But I do know that this wasn't something that they began when RFK is running. This was not something where the Jets ever thought, yeah, he's going to want Aaron Rodgers as a running mate. Like that was not something that they felt. No.
With Woody Johnson being a Trump guy and Rodgers being an RFK guy and critical of Trump at times, is there any chance for any sort of political tension between Woody and Aaron Rodgers, particularly in an election year?
Highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. And the reason why I say that is because Aaron is, everyone knows this. Like he has a lot of strong beliefs on things. Yeah. Right? Whether it's things that he's talked about publicly, the vaccine, politics, stances with certain things. I mean, he has a lot of very, very strong opinions about many, many topics. However, and I've had a chance to talk to him a decent amount, and it's been kind of changed my opinion of the way that he felt, because before he was hired by the Jets, signed by the Jets, I had an opinion that was probably shared by a lot of people about Rodgers, because of how vocal he had been at times about certain topics. And you kind of think he is a certain way. His thing is not necessarily, I'm right, you're wrong. If you don't think like I am, throw the middle finger up and kick you out. His thing is, let's have a conversation, right? Like, I think one way, you think another way. Let's have a whiskey and a cigar and sit down and let's talk about it. And it's never going to end in a screaming match. It's never going to end in a yelling match. It's never going to end with an F you, I'm right, you're wrong. Let's just talk about it. And Woody can be one way politically, and Aaron can be one way politically, and they can sit in a room, have some drinks, smoke some cigars, and talk about their political beliefs and debate it. And not in an angry, like, sure. It's one of those things. And I think that's what surprised me a lot about Aaron, talking to him a bit, were those things. Was that I thought it was going to be like, wow, this guy is so divisive and so set in his ways and stuck in his ways that he's going to think this, and it's just going to be so miserable covering this guy, and it's just going to be like, wow, he's cuckoo and crazy. It's not honestly like that. It's very much a, let's talk. Let's have a conversation. Let's sit down and talk about it. Like, about anything. Aliens? All right, yeah. Vaccine? Yeah, sure. Let's talk about it. When you feel the way you feel, why? I'll tell you why I feel the way I feel. And it's interesting. Again, I work in a field where everything's talking, everything's communication, everything's dialogue. And it was, again, I don't agree with Aaron on everything. Everyone doesn't agree with everyone on anything. But it's more it's better, in my opinion, when you can still just have the conversation. You can have differing opinions and differing beliefs and have conversations. I think there's nothing worse than when you have different opinions and you just throw the wall up. You know what I mean? And suddenly it's like, oh, we're just not going to talk anymore because I think one way, you think the other way. Let's just have a conversation. That's Rodgers. Again, I'm not saying everyone's got to agree with him. I'm not saying he's right on everything. It's just, he just wants to have a conversation. And that's why I don't think there will ever be any disconnect within the building over who thinks what way.
Yeah, no, definitely seems like he likes to have conversations. That's for sure.
That's it. Yeah.
How do the Jets feel about his conversations with McAfee?
There were times it got nerve-wracking. I think it was because he's not. So, for example, I mean, for anyone who hasn't been in a locker room, like when you have when you're a major player and you have a major platform like that, usually the media relations staff talks to the player before he gives an interview. You know what I mean? So, like, if a player gets suspended before he's brought to us, and I'll throw my little logos back here, otherwise my lighting's gonna get all screwed up. So before any player talks to us on a controversial topic or issue, media relations staff goes to him and basically says, like, hey, they're going to ask you X, Y, Z. Be prepared for these questions. You probably want to answer it this way. More importantly, these are probably the 5 or 6 things you don't want to say. Like, don't say these things, because you say these things, it's going to end poorly. Like, just don't say those things. Aaron kind of, I'm sure they talk to him and say, like, hey, be prepared for these questions. Aaron's been doing this a while, and Aaron's been in the spotlight for a while, and he's been polarizing for a while. I don't necessarily know how much he goes like, okay, yeah, you want me to say this? I'm going to say this. So those McAfee things, like when he goes off and says some of the things that he says, I don't necessarily know if the Jets are like, know exactly what he's going to say. And when some comments were made, whether it was the Kimmel remarks or when he then went back at Kimmel after Kimmel responded to him, I don't necessarily know if there was a lot of understand. I think they were probably watching that interview and saying, like, what's he going to say? I don't necessarily know if they knew what he was going to say. And a lot of times when players speak, media relations, they have a general idea of what they're going to say. Rodgers is just such a different breed from what your normal athlete is. I think I would, knowing how media relations people work in general, their whole objective is to control the narrative, right? That is you want to control the narrative. You want to control it all. And when you have a player that's speaking on a platform that you don't necessarily have control over, I'm sure, like, yeah, they would prefer he doesn't do that. That's just normal. Do they have an issue with him doing it? No. So it's two. Like, yeah, obviously, like, if it was up to NFL communications departments, the only time players would speak would be exactly when they are sitting in the room with you. Like, they don't like when you have one-on-one. It's just how the world works. Because, again, they don't want random quotes to get out. Think about when NJ.com talked to Evan Neal and he made the comment about the people flipping burgers and hot dogs. Like, that's who Giant fans are. Like, yeah, the media relations staff wants to be next to him to be like, don't say that. Like, off the record, don't say that, right? Like, that's what they want to say. They're not able to control everything. So this is a situation where they can't control it. So they don't necessarily have an issue with it. But yeah, I'm sure in a perfect world, they were like, no, the only time Aaron speaks is on Wednesday for 10 minutes in front of our local media, and that's it. I'm sure that's what they prefer, but that's just not how it works.
So it sounds like they probably wouldn't try to stop him from going on those podcasts or
no,
doing McAfee interviews.
But they couldn't. Even if they wanted to, they couldn't. So Aaron's his own guy. Aaron's gonna do what Aaron wants.
Yeah.
And they're not gonna be able to control that.
Do you know if they've talked to Rodgers after the fact, like between Tucker Carlson and the Jimmy Kimmel headlines and vaccines and RFK, has there been a headline caused by Rodgers that sort of struck a nerve with the Jets?
I think the stuff with Jimmy probably didn't sit super well with them. That one would probably be the one. As far as like the vaccine and politics, like, that, like, he talked about it in Green Bay. It's not like he was just going to stop. Yeah, it's not like the Jets could sit him down and be like, look, if we're bringing you to our team, you're not talking about this anymore. Like, that's not where. If they said that to Aaron, he'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to go play for the Raiders then. Like, bye. I'll go relink with Devontae. Like, I'm good with that. Like, so it was one of those things where you know what you're getting with that. Some of those other headlines, I think, were probably the ones that maybe made them go like, oh, didn't think that was coming out. Like, that was, I think, one of the, some of that stuff. Yeah.
JJ Redick was just introduced as the Lakers head coach earlier this week, and during the press conference when he said that he hadn't talked to LeBron James about the job, there was this audible groan from somebody in the room. Can you remember one time that Rodgers was speaking where, like, collectively the reporters in the room rolled their eyes?
No. And the reasoning for it, usually when something like that is said, it's kind of like, that would be that. I mean, he hasn't said anything that jarring aside from like the BS comment, like the BS got to get out of the building. And one of those, it's like, you want to make sure that you heard it right before you tweet it and report it, because with somebody like him, like, it's going to explode, period. It's going to explode. It's just a matter of like, the last thing you want to do is like have one word wrong and it explodes for the wrong reason. That it's a different breed. But no, I can't recall it. That's never happened. And honestly, most of the time, like, there hasn't really been, he's answered everything pretty on. Like, the thing about the JJ thing is it's hard to believe that's true.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's hard to believe that that's an accurate thing, that the only time he talked to LeBron was in that moment. You feel like that's not accurate.
Yes.
Every time you ask Aaron anything, even when it's a questionable, divisive, maybe somewhat uncomfortable topic, he always answers it pretty honestly. At least to the most that he can answer it honestly. He hasn't. There's never been a press conference yet that I can recall where he just outwardly lied. You know what I mean? Like, he never did that. Even when Diana and Zach accurately reported about Zach Wilson's reluctance to play, when they asked Aaron about that on the McAfee show, he didn't go out and say it's not true. His criticism was, why are you reporting that when it's only going to hurt Zach? Like, that was his argument. He never denied it. Go back and read his comment. He never once denies it because he won't lie. Like, that's his thing, is that he won't lie. He won't necessarily, if you ask him a question like that, like, he'll find a way to answer it, but you realize, like, he didn't say no. So a lot of these other topics, like, especially when it's a very sensitive subject, he answers it truthfully and honestly, because the moment you start lying about a sensitive subject like that or trying to tell a half truth, you're going to get screwed. It's just going to happen. I mean, we've seen it happen with Robert a handful of times on the podium where he's tried to dance around or tried to outsmart it, and it's come back to bite him. Like, Rodgers, I think, probably because he's been doing it 20-something years, he kind of realized that he doesn't necessarily do that anymore.
Yeah, there was this thought when he was traded to the Jets, and it mostly came from the national media about how, like, this isn't Green Bay anymore, and he's going to struggle with the New York media. Or was there anything to those concerns?
Out, yes. With Rodgers, no. So Rodgers didn't. I mean, he didn't care about it at all. They're out wide. Yeah. I mean, they thought, people did think that was going to be an issue. Like, that was a real thing. But since he's been here, there has been no issue. There has been no moment where dealing with Aaron. And again, unfortunately, I have to go all the way back to, like, OTA's minicamp, training camp, because we only got him a week in the season. There really hasn't been a moment where it was like, wow, he doesn't know what he's doing. And I think a reason for that is, like, yeah, he hasn't dealt with the New York media for a while, but he's been in the national spotlight as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL since his fourth, fifth year in the league. So I think that brings an attention that is used to it. Now, if you have, like, a college kid, Zach Wilson would probably be a good example. Like, a kid coming from a BYU program, and then he's thrown into New York, probably going to have a little bit of an issue dealing with it. If you have players like that, like, those are the players I'd worry about less so than Rodgers.
Yeah. I thought that whole thing was kind of overblown, that narrative. I think I've realized it's not necessarily the interactions with reporters that might be different. It's everything just kind of being magnified and turned into a headline and aggregated. I don't think that happened as much when Rodgers was in Green Bay, but I think part of that is also that Rodgers is a lot more open in recent years than he was earlier in his career. So I think he has something to do with that change as well.
Yeah, he wasn't. It wasn't early. I think, honestly, what maybe prepared him for New York was when he took some of the vocal stances that he did regarding the vaccine.
Yeah.
When he did that his final year in Green Bay, that made him suddenly not just, hey, Packers quarterback said it. Like, now he's on CNN, Fox, like everything. Then I think that almost, like, prepared him, because the moment he started being a little bit more vocal about that, that's when I think a lot more people started caring about what he said and then getting angry about what he said. And that probably gave him a good idea of what it was going to be like with New York and headlines.
What is the relationship like amongst Jets reporters? Like, is the reporters for different outlets, is it competitive?
It's very competitive, but it's very competitive because it's New York, and we all have people that we talk to in the building, and we all have our sources, and we all want to get a leg up on each other, and we all want to beat the person next to us, but it's not dirty. For a while there, when I first started, it was, and for one reason in particular, but like, it was very like that. It was very cutthroat. It was backstabbing. Not with everybody, but it was like that. A couple years ago, that changed, and now there is still, like, Zach Rosenblatt's one of my best friends. Like, I love the guy. I still want to beat his ass. Like, and it's one of those things where, like, I grind to get my story. And when he gets a good story, it's like hat tip and then give him, like, the FU and then move on. We'll still go grab drinks together, but, like, there is that, like, it's a weird feeling. But, like, when I got married a few years ago, Costello, Cimini, like Dennis, like all these guys, they were all invited to my wedding. They're my competition, the guys I compete with daily, but, like, we're still friends, you know? Yeah. And it's a very healthy competing relationship where, like, when you get a good story, or you write a good story, you get a good scoop, there's not too much, like, I'm going to go try to go into the locker room to the next guy and talk trash about Zach to this guy to hopefully poison their relationships. Now he talks to me and not him. Like, there was that for a little bit, like, and the beginning. And then that is no longer there. It really isn't.
Why was it dirty early on?
I think you got any Jet fan can piece that one together.
Yeah.
Any Jet fans will know that one.
Yeah. Do you do the local reporters mind the national reporters? Like, do you get annoyed at all if Adam Schefter is in the building, or if Ian Rappaport is the one to break something on NFL Network?
Just only from a competitive standpoint.
Yeah, same standpoint.
Like, and only if I'm chasing it. So if I've got something and I'm grinding and I know I've got it and I'm just waiting for one more voice to know I can go with it, and then they get it, then I'm pissed off. But it's not because Ian or Mike or Adam get it. It's because I didn't get it. Like it could be anybody. It could be Zach or Kaz or it's that same mindset. Like it's only that. Those guys. When you like, you think about Adam Schefter, like when you hear about how he got to be Adam Schefter, you can't, like, this guy, it wasn't a silver spoon. He didn't have this handed to him. Like, that dude freaking grinded to get to where he is and know who he is and get the information that he does. And at the end of the day, like Palacero and Rapp and Garofalo, like, these guys know more things from talking to, they talk to more people than I know. You know what I mean? It's just, I cover the Jets and Giants. That's 2. They know people across 32 teams, and the information that they know that I'm fighting for, like you kind of realize, like, it is, you're fighting an uphill battle. So when they get one, it's like, you kind of understand it. The anger comes in when, like, you're chasing something and you just can't get it. And then they do. And it's not, again, I'm not angry at them. It's like, I'm just like, man, I was chasing it and I missed it. Like, comparison, I was chasing Burns when the Giants traded for Brian Burns. Like, I knew he was getting traded. I knew it was a 2-5, and I knew the holdup was they were just working out a contract. And I just needed, like, one voice from the Giants or Jets to, like, tell me it's done. And I couldn't get it. And then eventually I got one to be like, it's getting to the finish line. I was able to report, like, the interest is there. They're talking trade, and this is the one holdup. But I didn't get, like, the break. And it's like, yeah, you're frustrated for a second, but at the same time, you know the work that those guys have put into, where it's not like it's like a, screw you. It's just like like you were close, like one of those things.
Do you send your sources any gifts? The way Adam Schefter has said he spends a lot of money on fancy chocolates that he sends around.
Man, yeah. I'll tell you what, dude. I don't have the disposable income that Adam has right now after he signed that latest contract. I've got a mortgage, and we were just talking to a 1-year-old downstairs right now watching Moana. I don't have the financial means at the moment to be sending gifts to them. I got to worry about this buying a house in this market and my kid downstairs. But my thing is, like, anytime a source gives me a break, I report it, I get it done. And once my work is done, the first thing I do is I call them. And I just say, look, I understand that you did not have to give me this, that you have people, like, if they took that information to Tom, or they took that information and gave it to Adam or Ian, Tom, Adam, and Ian are going to be able to tell the person who told me significantly more information because of how well sourced they are across the entire NFL. And they can help him more than I ever can. Period. That's just cold hard truth of it. Like, I that's the truth of it. That guy still chose to give it to me. And so anytime they do, that's something where I call the guy. I'm like, I understand you did not have to do this, and you did anyway. And that means so much. Like, when I'm we're at the combine owners meeting, like, I take these guys out to dinner, like, things like that, but I don't send gifts, unfortunately. And I don't know, that's going to, hopefully not too many sources like, damn it, Connor. Like, I would have given you something else if you sent me a box of chocolates. So you'll see. I just don't, you know what I'll do? I'll load up, like, the day after Valentine's Day when everything's like 80% off, and I'll throw them in the freezer. And then that'll be the one that I
there you go. Do you think Robert Saleh still trusts Joe Beningo as a source to go to?
That's a bummer, just because I know he was warned that, it's like, Robert loves talking to people, and Robert is so damn friendly that it backfires on him, and that backfired on him because I think when you're like Joe, I love Joe Beningo, but he's not a reporter. Like, you know what I mean? So there's a sourcing relationship between reporters and media that are understood, what's off the record, on the record. Like, if I showed you my phone, some of the things people have told me, like, I would never, like, if I wrote that, it would go viral. But, like, also that person's now never going to talk to me again. Like, there's an understanding of how communicating with sources works. And unfortunately, he got burned just because I don't think that understanding was necessarily there.
Yeah, no, I think
because Joe's a good guy. Like, Joe's not a bad person. It wasn't malicious.
Yeah. No, every WFAN listener, every Joe Beningo fan, as soon as that happened, is like, what is Robert Saleh doing texting Joe Beningo? Like he's got it. It almost it shows a little bit of a lack of awareness on Saleh's part. Like I know Joe has texted Bill Belichick. He's talked about the relationship he has with him, but like Belichick was not texting Joe about his active quarterback situation.
Yeah, and again, that's who Robert is. Like if he's such a nice open guy.
Yeah.
He's guarded a lot of times too, but like with certain information, but he will be honest he is to a fault willing to tell you why. To a fault, he's willing to tell you why. And unfortunately, when he tells the wrong people why and they run it, it got him burned, unfortunately.
What's the say a percentage of information that you receive that actually gets reported?
10 to 15. Probably 10 to 15%. Like the Rodgers story is a good example of that. Like I was able to tell you guys, he's on vacation, he's on a trip, pre-planned why he felt this was important. I can't tell you where he is. Like, and that's a juicy nugget that would go viral. But like, it's not worth losing relationships, and it's not like someone on social media made a comment to me, like because I responded, like somebody was on my ass about like we want you to find out where he is, I'm like, I know where he is, but it's just for security reasons. The information they don't want the information out there. So I told Matt, and it was like somebody had tweeted me, a follower, and it said like, what kind of journalist doesn't just write everything they know? And I sent her a DM and it was basically just like, not being a dick, like explaining like, this is why. And I got a piece of advice from somebody very early in my career is writing it before you write anything, before you hit send, ask yourself, is reporting that information worth that person never talking to you again? And that's just how the business works. And unfortunately, I think some people outside don't totally understand that.
Yeah.
But that's really what it is it's about building and cultivating relationships and then go and getting your questions answered, because sitting on nugget 1, 2, or 3 could lead to you having information for stories 4, 5, and 6 down the road. And it's just about it. And don't get me wrong, it's the worst part of the job is having it, wanting to scream it from the roof and not being able to. But eventually you just learn, like the reward down the line is not worth the risk of saying it now.
How would you describe your relationship with Jets fans?
Usually pretty good. Right now they're on my butt at the moment. Like right now they're not thrilled with me at the moment, but I genuinely have enjoyed getting to know all of Jets Twitter on Twitter over the years, just from when I started, because that was where I felt like I made a little niche for myself. Was when I was on the beat in 2014 starting, I was writing for the Journal Inquirer and About.com, and I needed to find a way to separate myself. I needed to be a little bit different, and a lot of the other guys on the beat use social media just to tweet their links, tweet their observations, and move on. And the way that I did was I opened up my life, and I let them know what I was doing, what I liked, what I was interested in. When I started, Bree and I were dating at the time, when we got married, when I had my daughter Brooke, like I opened my life, and it was like I always wanted to create a situation where if a Jet fan saw me at a bar, they could come up to me and we could spend 30 minutes talking about the Jets, and then we could spend 30 minutes talking about life, and I had a professor too explain, like, that's how Howard Stern popped off and became so popular. It's like, it wasn't necessarily how abrasive he was on saying certain things, which he was, like, that gained headlines, but it was that he opened his life to people. And that's burned me sometimes with like what happened with Jamal Adams earlier in the year. But for the most part, I think it's why I've cultivated a little bit of a following on social media. And when I say something, it tends to make a little bit more than just a ripple. And I know they're pissed off after the whole Tony Vegas saga, but I know like any good relationship, you have fights and you bicker, but you always come back around to each other. And I hope that ends up happening with me and Jets Twitter here in a couple of weeks.
Did you I know Jamal kind of doubled down publicly. Did you hear from him privately at all?
No, not once. No, me or my wife. Neither one.
Yeah. Last thing I want to ask is Woody Johnson. It seems like he definitely cares about the Jets. He wants to win. Like he tries. He spends money. He seems to be like a relatively thoughtful person. Why has he failed so miserably as the owner of the Jets? Like, is he listening to the wrong people? Is he too enamored with the shiny object?
Yeah.
What is the biggest issue with Woody Johnson?
That's the thing, is like I get into that cluster as well. where I say, like, man, the Jets, and for the last 13 years, they've been terrible for the last 13 years. But before that, they were good with Herm. They made playoffs with Parcells. Like they haven't been during Woody's run. They haven't been the Browns. Like they haven't been like, not the recent Browns, but like they haven't been the Cleveland Browns. Like that wasn't them. They're just on a really bad run of these last 13 years. And the reasoning for it is that they have had ineptitude at quarterback. And I think some of the problems probably were centered around hiring, that it was like Mike McCagnon put them into a rut. Joe Douglas hasn't been able to find the quarterback. And even when Woody was having success with the Jets early in his career, Pennington was there, Testaverde was there, O'Brien had some good years. Like they had players who were contributing and were not top 5 quarterbacks, but they were starting quarterbacks in the NFL. They were legitimate. They're not Pro Bowlers, but they are a starting NFL quarterback. My time covering the Jets, man, I can run down the list. Geno was not a starting quarterback. Bryce Petty, Christian Hackenberg, Josh McCown, Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson. Like these players haven't been there. Ryan Fitzpatrick absent 1 year. They haven't had anyone who even sniffed what Chad Pennington was. They never had anyone who even sniffed what Testaverde was. They have had incompetence at the quarterback position. And when you have incompetence there, it's so hard to do anything else anywhere else. And I really believe that's why they've been in this rut. It's like you can make the argument, oh, Adam Gase was a bad hire. Oh, Todd Bowles wasn't a good hire. Todd looked okay in Tampa the last couple of years, right? I do believe that if you give a good team around Adam, he's not the 2-win team that the Jets were before they drafted Zach Wilson. Like, I don't think Robert Saleh is a bad coach. They just haven't had the quarterback. And until you have a quarterback in the NFL, you really don't have anything.
Was there one quarterback that you listed that you were surprised didn't pan out? Like, did you have high expectations for Sam?
Sam Darnold was the one. Zach was the one where I listened to what the Jets said, like in terms of why they drafted him, and they explained it. I talked to some draft people, but like I remember when they missed out on Trevor, the pivot was like, the kid out of BYU. And there were a lot more like, no, look at this. But there was always a but, like a lot of buts with Zach, whether it was the competition wasn't there, this, that, the other thing, blah, blah, blah. Sam was the one that was, I remember talking to Christopher Johnson actually about it. And when he was running the show for Woody. And Christopher told me, he goes, we were so convinced that Sam was going number 1 overall that when he came here on our pre-draft visit, I talked to him about where he should live in Cleveland because the Browns had the number 1 pick. And when he fell to the Jets, it was like, this guy's the athleticism, the persona. Like, I mean, people love him as a person. He has the talent. He has the ability. He played big-time college ball. He had success at the big-time college level. Like, he's been in the spotlight forever. When that one didn't work out, it was like, man, I really thought it was going to be good. Yeah. Like, I really, really thought Sam was going to be good. And maybe things do go different with the Jets if he had a better staff and better surrounding talent. I don't know. But Sam was the one that I really thought was going to be good.
I know I said last question, but with you just mentioning Chris Johnson, has there been any discussion about whether Woody would take a position in a second Trump administration if he becomes president again?
I don't know that for sure. I would think probably. I mean, but that's just me talking. Like, I haven't talked to Woody. I haven't talked to the Jets about it. I think they're all, I mean, there's a lot that kind of has to happen before we get to there. But he could. And then I would be curious to see what happens. Like, what happens from there? Is it Christopher takes over? Does Jaime assume a bigger role? Is there someone else in the Johnson family? Maybe one of his sons takes on more of responsibility. I don't necessarily know, but that would be fascinating to see, because I do think that if offered, that was for Woody one of the greatest honors of his life when he was able to do that. And I think if he got an opportunity to do it again, knowing how much he valued his time over there the first time, I would think he would probably do it again. And then it would be curious about what would happen with the Jets.
Right. Yeah. And especially timing wise with the Jets, because like if things don't go well this year, then that could be happening at a time where the Jets are looking to completely clean house and start fresh. So definitely interesting.
Yeah.
Connor, you were great. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Dude, no problem at all. Thank you so much for having me on. This was a blast.
That is Connor Hughes. I'm Brandon Contes. This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Please rate and subscribe to this podcast. Please also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page. But regardless of how you consume Awful Announcing and the Awful Announcing Podcast, thanks for listening and be good.
Thanks for listening to the Awful Announcing Podcast. For the latest news spanning the sports media landscape and more, check out awfulannouncing.com and follow us at Awful Announcing.